So we'll talk about when is red corn ready to harvest and how can you tell. And we're going to do a video on corn harvesting, but just for right now, you can see that when they start to turn white or beige like that, I should have my helper here, but she had to go to town. But I'm just gonna show you, these are ready. Look at those beauties. We'll be picking these today and tomorrow. So yes, when they turn the beige and the husks start to dry out, that's when they're ready. You can see a lot of them are still kind of green, like that one, and the others next to it. So we'll keep an eye on them and pick them when they're ready. No need to rush anything. You can see the pole beans really took off in here too, growing up the stalks and even knocking stalks down. Well, not hurting anything, they're just bending them over. A lot of bean leaves and beans. And you know, hard to keep up with the removing the thistles, although they're doing fine. They're not overcrowding everything. Gonna go around to the other side now. Beautiful. Sure, we get some grasshoppers, and they eat a few holes in the leaves, but not a plague of locusts, so we can all live together. They'll take a little bit off the leaves, and that's fine. You know, the corn's doing fine with a few grasshopper neighbors. Wow, look at those beans. So there's a couple ready to pick in there. Oops. Didn't know which way to zoom. Okay. And we'll just go over to the next corn patch here in a minute. You can see the pollinators, like little bumblebees and other ones. And these little sunflowers, you can eat them too, but we're probably gonna feed a lot of these to our chickens, these little tiny sunflowers, when they're ripe. Let's see if any of these are ripe. If they are, the things just come off. Almost, they're getting there. Wow. Oh, I had a hornet on my finger, but it was just checking me out. But I smell the pitch in the sunflowers. It almost smells like pine pitch. Okay, it was on my fingers and made a hornet follow it. Okay, we'll move on. There's the tomatoes. Maybe I'll do that before we look at more corn. So we have them in rows with trellises and strings holding up the tomatoes so they don't all just flow along the ground where they're more susceptible to predators like rodents if they're on the ground, and if there's any ground bugs like slugs. We want to get them up on these strings, as you see, and requires some attention to make sure they're up as they grow. And I think we need to pull a few more of these up onto the strings. Maybe put a few more strings up here and keep them off the ground. Beautiful, lots of varieties. I know one of the names is Roma, and I can't tell you all the other names, but they're beautiful. Oh yeah, the little tiny tomatoes. What are those ones called? I eat them all the time. Anyway, they're down there. And here's that cherry tomatoes. Yeah, I started to call them berry tomatoes. Isn't that funny? Okay, but berry, cherry, they're kind of the same. You can see lots of pollinators in the buckwheat flowers. They're just providing welcome spaces for pollinators, including those moths. Look at those right there. Moths are good pollinators. People, some other gardeners tend to think of moths as pests because they give birth to caterpillars, and the hornets will eat the caterpillars. They're here, we all live together. We're not experiencing shortages of food because there's a few caterpillars here and there. There's room for everybody. Okay. Yeah, if you watch my video, Communities of Companions, I talk about all that more. And you know, the purpose of weeding when we weed is not to create bare land next to all of our cultivated plants. You know, it's to just preserve a balance and not let one kind of plant overcome the other plants that you want to cultivate. This is the painted mountain corn. And here's a clear example of using cardboard as a mulch, which we did in the other places, but not as big as sheets of cardboard in most places, just little ones. And then we also use big leaf plants for mulch in those other spaces we were just looking at over there. And it all seems to work fine. You can use plants that you weed for mulch, and you can use cardboard. And cardboard's readily available in the waste piles of stores in the towns. We like to get them from the furniture stores, or this one in particular in Missoula, where you know, they get these couches and chairs in giant boxes, and they don't have any use for them. And actually us going there to pick those cardboards up saves them the expense of recycling them themselves. So they welcome us to come and take their cardboard. They're very nice about that. And we'll use it to reduce weeds, not to exterminate them. Okay, let's look at this painted mountain corn. This is going to be picked today, I think. Definitely ready. the husks are dry and even opening up on their own, and that's something you don't want them to stay on the stalks that long, because when they are opened up like that, they're vulnerable to birds and rodents. Here's another one. Beautiful colors. Let's look inside of this one. Now, I can feel this husk isn't completely dry, but you can see there's some in there that are about ready. I might let that one stay for a couple of days more. There's some over there where they're really turning beige and dry. Oh, look at this one. This one's ready. So, another thing you'll see is that the silk is gone when they're dry. And we'll do a video about corn later. I gotta remember to stay on topic. This is just a... So another thing you might have noticed is no deer fences around here, or electric shocking fences, or anywhere. They've got their, the rancher who leases part of our land next door here and the tribal land. They put up, regular wire fences, not barbed wire. Used to be barbed wire there. Oh yeah, they did put some more barbed wire up there. But anyway, deer can jump fences easy, and they could come in here and eat these plants, but they don't. For 35 years, we've had maybe 2 or 3 deer take a couple of bites, and pretty much they've only left it alone. Now, the reasons for that, I'll leave that up to you to decide, but we do have dogs, and no deer or bears or raccoons or anything likes to mess with dogs. Just 3 dogs. They're real friendly. Usually we only had 2 dogs here most of the time we've been here. We had one dog that had 9 puppies, and we gave them away, but kept a couple of them a long time ago. Anyway, they don't like dogs, but our dogs are not out here all the time. They sleep in the house at night. Sometimes they like to sleep outside in the summer. But the other reason is we live in a pretty wild place. And the wildlife of all kinds has plenty of food around here. And they don't need to come risk their well-being around dogs to get the human planted and cultivated foods. That's what I think. I'm going to go over here to this wetland area, and this is another thing I wanted to show you, our wild habitat interface with the cultivated. When we moved here, there is none of these trees here, as you might have noticed in the photographs I showed earlier. And I dug a ditch along this line of trees. The reason they're here is I dug a ditch coming out of the irrigation canal and flowing through here. I planted a few trees, a couple of cottonwoods and poplars and maple, and all the others were volunteers. The quaking aspens came in. I wonder if I planted a couple of those, but they created a whole community of quaking aspens, cottonwoods. The pines have cast their seeds into the water, the wetland, and there's the maples over there. And so it's flourishing, and life attracts more life, right? And more biodiversity. And there's mint in here, which we use as an herb, make teas out of. Now here I started a couple of hugelkultur beds years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, and never finished them. I didn't retire from teaching till just 2 years ago, so now I have more time, and I will come in and finish the hugelkultur bed. See the wood? That's some cottonwood there, and there's some river birch in here, and I'll come back in and add a little bit more. I've got some logs here that still to pile on, and we'll finish these, and I'll have a couple of naturally flood-fed wetland hugelkultur beds in here. There's some mint next to a dogwood, wild red osier dogwood. It's coming here. Now you can see the water and the ditch that goes around it. And if this didn't have the flood water, it would all be dry like the dry grass over there. And not so much life and variety. Water, you just let water in, and dormant seeds that sometimes have been sitting there for 100 years, so it will come to life. And it was wonderful watching all this. I've got some slides, some photos of before and after we brought the water in here. There you can see the water. And there's some cranberries right there that I did plant. They love water. American cranberries, native to my homeland too, my ancestral homeland in Massachusetts. The Sonnet Wampanoag, Massachusetts tribes also. And birds like those too, the cranberries. Let's walk back over to the ditch. I'll have to get my feet a little wet in here. That's okay. Apricot tree has survived a lot of hard circumstances for an apricot tree here, but it did produce some when we picked them. Not the best habitat for an apricot tree, but it's surviving. We'll see what it can do. Here's a little footbridge I made over the ditch. And that's a kitty cat. Hi, kitty. And there's the water flowing through and heads down to some more wetlands. Okay, so all of these quaking aspen and cottonwoods came to life here, and it goes down to this forest past the greenhouse of poplars and cottonwoods and willows. Yes, I forgot to mention the willows. A lot of willows down there. And you can see the path of the water is where the trees are. Headed all the way to that irrigation ditch I showed you earlier. And so we have a pond down there. Well, just one more. You can see a line of trees along the fence too that weren't here when we moved here, and some cranberry bushes and willows and other things, caragana bushes from Asia. And this all came into being through letting the water go that way and digging a ditch, a couple of ditches. And I planted some of these, and many of them also came up as volunteers. The cottonwoods, poplars, and maples, I planted the maples, planted a couple cottonwoods, and the rest were all from the seeds that landed there. And then poplars and cottonwoods send out roots to send up more trees and create colonies of them. And here's the pond. Nice place to sit. Right, DJ? And a lot of aquatic bug life here and plant life. And there's a dragonfly. Lots of dragonflies, our friends who eat the mosquitoes. There's another one. Yes, so by the first week of August, usually there's no mosquitoes left because of the dragonflies showing up around then. So the gifts of water. Hey, look at that, coming right up to us. Whoa. Okay. Guess we'll go over and look inside the greenhouse now. I'd like to see the frogs return. Frogs have had a hard time these last 40 or 50 years, as you probably know. We've had a couple of them show up over the years and maybe got eaten by predators. Ooh, look at those. But wouldn't it be great if the habitat gets so good that the frogs make a comeback all over the world? I hope for things like that all the time. Trying to follow this dragonfly around. And we're on a highway, and one of my other dreams is that all the fossil fuel will be gone soon, and this would be a silent pathway, this highway, that people could take their horses or cars, I mean not cars, bikes, pedal-powered vehicles on, and all of this motor traffic will someday be gone. When there's no traffic, it's a very nice, quiet, peaceful place here.